Some backstory. My parents split when I was about 14. It wasn't a good breakup and my dad was an abusive drug addict. So when my mom left him, she was in a really bad place. Her and my older sister kept taking her to local bars since my mom was depressed. This led to my mom becoming an alcoholic since my sister was well on her way to becoming one too. During one of these nights, she met a guy. I didn't know much about him, just that they met him and his brother at a bar and now she was dating him. It went pretty fast and my sister would flirt with the brother to get free food and drinks from him. Around this time, I was about 15 and this dude just seemed off. He was probably early 40s or so and he was always going on my mom's dates with his brother. He just kind of hung around a lot. One day, my sister decided she wanted sushi and called the brother up to take us because she knew that he would pay. I didn't want to go, but we didn't have food in the house and I was hungry. We didn't have a sushi place in our town, so we had to drive to the city, which was about 30 minutes away. The entire ride, I just had this warning feeling in my stomach that kept telling me to get out of the car, that this was a bad idea. I was a giant ball of anxiety the whole 30 minutes. My sister sat in the front seat, completely oblivious to what was happening. Meanwhile, I kept catching him staring at me in the rearview mirror. Once we got to the restaurant, he sat himself directly across from me. He wanted to sit next to me, but I rushed to sit next to my sister instead. It was awkward, but my sister talked a lot, so I was kind of able to hide. Eventually, she got up to go to the bathroom, and then I was all alone with him. Almost immediately, he asked me if I had a boyfriend, and I said no. "That's good," he said. "You're too good for the high school boys. They're only after one thing." I just nodded, not knowing what to say. He then went on to ask if I liked Disneyland, and I said yes. He got excited and went on about how he would take me, but hotels were expensive, so we would probably have to share a room. It would just be us, so my mom and his brother could be alone. He said my sister couldn't come though because he couldn't afford to pay for us all to go. At this point, I was extremely uncomfortable, and I just wanted my sister to come back. She finally did, and he switched to just talking to her. She didn't notice anything was wrong or that he kept looking at me. Once we had finished, he took us home and invited himself in. I went to my room and I locked the door and hid. At one point, someone tried to open my door, but they stopped once they felt that it was locked. My mom and her boyfriend came home around then. I tried talking to my sister, but she brushed me off. They had invited us back to their house, and I wanted so badly to stay home, but they forced me to go too. Almost immediately, my mom and her boyfriend went to the room and left my sister and I with them. He got my sister drunk pretty fast and tried to get me to drink, but I kept refusing. It got to the point where my sister was almost blacked out drunk, and I was freaking out because once she passed out, it would just be us. I started texting my brothers, hoping that one of them would be able to pick me up. Thank God my oldest brother responded. I told him what was happening, and he came to get me. He showed up and told the guy that it was late, and that I had school, so he was taking me home. He tried to protest, but my brother was very firm about it. He loaded my sister in the car, texted my mom that he was taking us home, and then we left. My brother didn't live with us since he was about 30 at the time and had his own family, so he didn't know what was going on. I told him the full story and he got really quiet, and then waited until my mom got home. He told her off, shamed her for putting me in that situation, and told her that if it continued, he would move me into his house. My mom broke down then and told him that she wanted to break up with her boyfriend because of his brother. I found out when I was older that he would sneak by the door to listen to them when they had sex. I think more happened, but my mom never talked about it more than that. She broke up with him, got a good job, and sobered up with the help of my brother. It took my sister a lot longer, but she eventually got her life back together. Okay, to preface this, here's a little backstory. At the time of this incident, I was 17 years old and a senior in high school. I rode the school bus sometimes when my friend didn't drive me home. This is what happened that day. I got off my school bus at my street, and the stop was at an intersection between my street and the highway. My street isn't a big street, it only has about 7 houses, and every person on my street is a business owner. I know all my neighbors. Well, I got off my bus, and while I'm walking towards my street, a white van pulls up and stops in front of the bus. The van had tinted windows and those sometimes illegal tints on the front window as well. Well, I walked onto my street and the bus drove away. And once the bus went away, the van turned onto my street. It drove slow and kept with me. I immediately was just like, oh, absolutely not. Because kidnapping is a big thing in my state. I saw the car stop right next to me, and that's when I ran. I ran across one of my neighbor's lawns as I heard the man in the van open his door. I went on the phone and turned on Moonlight, an app where, if I let go of the button on the screen, it immediately sent police to my location. I ran as fast as I could and hid for 10 minutes, waiting for the van to drive away. Once the van left, I went to my house and told my parents, and we called the police. The police came, interviewed me, and told me that there had been sightings of that car all around town, and there were even a few disappearances linked to it. It's been about a year and nothing has happened, and I'm beyond happy about that fact. I had been sent to Korea from my university a few years ago. They told me for my major that I had to go somewhere in Asia, and my friend had really talked up Korea for me. I knew nothing about it, but I decided what the heck, and I embarked on a semester-long trip. I had only had one serious boyfriend in my life, who I had broken up with a few months prior. I also don't enjoy one-night stands and wasn't digging the dudes at the clubs in Seoul. But I still wanted to have some sort of romantic experience, I suppose. So my friend recommended I use this dating app to meet English-speaking Koreans. That way I can meet someone and experience the actual dating culture. I thought I'm young, so why not? I was just so eager to have new experiences. Maybe it sounds dumb to try dating in a foreign country, but it worked out for me eventually. Just not the first date. I met him on a dating app after being in Seoul about 3 weeks. Let's call him Tim. I still didn't know the culture or the city very well, and I was a bit naive about everything. He eagerly wanted to meet for a date after talking to me, and he seemed nice. I should have asked more questions, and I should have noticed that he was not giving me many details about himself. Tim was a guy a bit older than me, but claimed that he was a college student. I assumed that he had done his military time, all men in Korea have to, and returned to school. We talked for a bit and decided to meet for a tea date near the school that I went to. He wanted to come up to my dorm originally to pick me up, but I live in an all-women's dorm and I didn't want him to know exactly where I lived, since we were still strangers. So instead, I insisted we meet at the main town center near the subway. He really didn't like this idea, which looking back was a red flag, but eventually I insisted. The night of the date, I waited an hour for this guy. He was very late. Tim weirdly claimed he just wanted to make me wait. I thought he was kidding and messaged him a laughing emoji, assuming that he was just lost. When he finally arrived, he was much smaller than I thought. But a man's height has never been something that I care much about. He was also quite thin. Maybe I let my guard down because I didn't see him as physically threatening to me, which was a mistake in the end. Right off the bat, he was way too touchy with me, and breathed creepy and heavy. I was so off-put with his demeanor. I'm usually very tolerant with different personality types, but this was odd to me. I had been told that Korean men would be polite and not so touchy on the first date. He was also dressed oddly like in business attire for a date, but I thought that maybe it was just a Korean thing too. Again, I was dumb and knew nothing about the culture. And then the first thing he said to me was, "You're not as white as I thought you were." I thought this was a translation error, but his English was near perfect. So I asked for clarification and he said what he meant. "I thought you would be more white. Your skin is darker than I thought, and your eyes aren't as green. Are you pure European?" Now I was officially weirded out. First of all, I'm pretty much as white as you can get. I'm Irish and Scandinavian, so white as hell basically. So the fact that he thought I could have possibly been any whiter was funny. And why did he care in the first place anyway? Why does my skin color matter to this guy? And why is he bringing it up? He said about 3 times on the date that he wished that I had greener eyes. And every time I would just reply, "Well, maybe my online photos make me look better." And I brushed it off as him being nervous and trying to start a conversation. Isn't it funny the dumb excuses you make for people when you're panicked? When we arrived at the tea place, I tried to order a basic raspberry tea, and he stopped me and told me that I had to have this specialty. I thought it was weird he wanted to choose my tea for me, but in my head, I brushed it off once again. He really insisted I drink only this tea type, and I just agreed. These small details became weirder later on. After tea, he asked if we could look around my school. It was dark, but the school was very well lit, so I agreed. And the whole time we walked around, he would randomly stop and grab me for long hugs. At first, I let it happen, but then I stopped him. But he kept trying. He just would grab me and breathe heavily into my neck. It was so awkward. He also would not tell me any personal details about himself. I asked so many questions, desperately trying to distract from all the awkward grabbing and to try to get him to know him. But he would never tell me anything. He even said at one point, "I'm a mysterious man," like a movie line. He also said something like, "You look so much like my favorite movie character." And I asked who, but he said that I would have to figure it out on my own. Finally, he said, "I want to go to a darker area." And in my head, I screamed, "Heck no." At this point, I wanted the date over fast. He somehow knew there was a wooded area behind my campus and he said that we should go there. I said no and that I wanted to stay near the main campus in town, but he kept pushing. Finally, he grabbed my arm and started dragging me there. He said that I can't let anyone see and I started to panic. I finally ripped my arm away and just demanded that we leave and go back to the main road immediately. Looking back, I don't know why I didn't ask for help or get angry. Maybe I was scared. But I just began to book it back to the main road, and he followed. We ended up in front of a hospital near the center of town, and I told him that it was time for him to go. I made some excuse and he was pleading with me to stay. I told him that we could meet the next day. I lied and that I would message him. I just wanted to get away at this point. I was pretending it was all okay just so that he would leave. Suddenly, I think he's leaning in to kiss me, and I immediately think, "Oh God, no." But it was so much worse. Instead, I feel pain in my face. It takes me a second to realize that he was biting it, like a dog. I had never felt the sensation before. He leaned his head sideways and bit me on my nose and cheek as hard as he could. I screamed and pushed him away from me. His face looked so freaky, and I barely had time to react in words. Instead, I ran up the sidewalk until I saw a convenience store on the right. I ran to the back of the store and bent down to start crying. The man who owned the store started to yell at me, but I couldn't explain my situation. I just begged him in English to let me stay. I ended up having to buy a popsicle to stick around. God, I wish that I had learned some Korean by then. I guess Tim didn't follow me. I peered outside the store and didn't see him. I texted a friend and waited for him to get to me to take me back to my dorm. On the way, I messaged him and basically told him to stay away from me. I told him that he was a creep, that he shouldn't bite women, and something along the lines of me calling the police. And then I blocked him. I was so scared to walk around my school area after that. I was so afraid that he would find me somehow. I'm so thankful that I never let him pick me up at my dorm. I called my mom to tell her about what had happened when suddenly she said, "Wait, what did he ask you?" She then put some details together and realized that all of these weird things had to do with the 50 Shades of Grey books. At first, I thought she was just being silly and overthinking a bad date. I thought that she was joking, but God, was she right. She had recently seen the movie or read the book or something and knew the details. The eye color and the way that he dressed, and the tea that he made me drink and the random lines he said. It all matched the books and movies. My mom thinks that he picked me because I look like the girl in that movie to him. It explains why he was so fixated on my appearance, and his whole thing with the biting and trying to do that. Even if it wasn't his intention, I later learned that there are some few creeps who seek out foreign girls to do this to. They call it the white horse or something along those lines. On a happier note, this bad experience didn't stop me. I eventually met someone else in Korea and we ended up falling in love. We even did the whole long distance thing, and now I'm living in Korea, studying and working. We're hoping to marry soon. So, I guess I didn't let bad creepy guys stop my life. This happened when I was 13. I'm a girl and I was in the 8th grade and the middle school I went to was about a 15-minute walk, so not very far. For context, my older brother and I grew up in eastern LA in a small house that had a metal gate and both the front and back doors had a black metal screen door and a wooden door. During the day, we would always leave the wooden door open and to have the black metal door closed and locked. Except for this day. That day, I came home from school and had about an hour before anyone else would be home. I was really thirsty, so I rushed inside, grabbed a drink, and sat down at the kitchen table, which was about 10 feet away from the front door. I heard the metal gate open and was surprised as no one should have been coming home that early. I got up to see who it was and I saw an older man, probably in his 60s. He had short white hair and a long white beard. He was wearing an AC/DC t-shirt, torn jeans, and sunglasses. I remember thinking he looked a lot like Santa Claus, but dirty and creepy. He knocked on the metal screen door and asked if my parents were home. I was a dumb kid and said that they weren't. He got a smile on his face and said that he collected donations for needy children. I said sorry, but I didn't have any money. He said that sometimes children donated old toys. I said that I didn't have any to donate. He insisted that I must have some that I didn't want anymore. He was beginning to creep me out and I noticed that I hadn't locked the door when I came inside. I tried to keep my cool as I slowly and very carefully locked the door. I kept him talking so he wouldn't notice. A minute or two later, he wouldn't leave, so I decided that I would pretend to check for toys, and then say that I didn't have any so that he would hopefully leave. I told him that I would go check, and as I turned and took a few steps down the hallway, I clearly heard him yank at the door trying to open it. I didn't want him to know that I'd heard, so I kept walking down the hallway and into the room. I didn't have a cell phone and the only phone in the house was in the kitchen. I thought about what to do, and I decided to stick with my plan. After about 2 or 3 minutes, I walked out hoping that he had left. Nope. Creepy Santa Man was still there. I told him sorry, but I didn't find anything. He sighed and said alright and that he would check another time. He left and walked across the street. I watched from the kitchen window peeking through the blinds as he just stood there staring at me for about 45 minutes. My brother and a few of his friends finally came walking on the street. As my brother came inside, and his friends kept walking down the street, the man walked away around the corner and disappeared. I told my brother what happened, and he walked outside to look, but the creepy Santa man was long gone now. When Mom came home, we told her what had happened, and she called the police, but they said to call back if he ever showed up again. Thankfully, he never did. So, creepy Santa man, let's not meet again.